I've been driving trucks for over 20 years now, and there's nothing quite like the rhythm of the open road. My name's Mike Harlow, and the cab of my Peterbilt 389 has been more of a home to me than my actual house in Tulsa. The familiar vibration of the engine, the worn leather seat molded perfectly to my body after countless miles, and the endless ribbon of asphalt stretching out before me. That's my world. Route 66 has always been special to me. My old man was a trucker too, and some of my earliest memories are riding shotgun with him along this historic highway. The Mother Road, he'd call it with reverence in his voice. Even though the interstate system has replaced most of it, I still take the old sections whenever I can. There's history in that pavement, stories embedded in every mile marker. That particular Tuesday started like any other. I was at Ellie's Diner in Tulsa, my regular breakfast spot before a long haul. Ellie herself, a tough-as-nails woman in her 60s who'd been serving truckers since before I had my license, slid a plate of eggs and hash browns in front of me. "Where you headed this time, Mike?" she asked, topping off my coffee without me having to ask. "Santa Monica," I said between bites, "taking the scenic route." She nodded knowingly. "Route 66. Your daddy would be proud." I smiled at that. Dad had passed 5 years ago, but I still felt him riding with me sometimes, especially on the Mother Road. My phone buzzed, a text from my dispatcher, Jerry. "Got a special load for you. High-value cargo for the Route 66 Museum in Santa Monica. Need your confirmation ASAP." I texted back my agreement without much thought. Museum cargo meant antiques, memorabilia, maybe some art. Easy enough, just required extra care and security protocols. What I didn't know then was that this routine assignment would change everything. After breakfast, I headed to the warehouse district to pick up the trailer. The loading dock was different from my usual spots. Higher security, guys in suits overseeing the loading instead of the regular dock workers. They had me sign about a dozen more forms than usual, emphasizing the value and historical significance of the cargo. "It's a major exhibition," explained a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Keller from the museum. "Some of these pieces haven't been displayed publicly in decades." I nodded, trying to look like I appreciated the significance. Truth was, I was more focused on my route planning and weather forecasts than whatever old signs and gas pumps I was hauling. Little did I know that among those carefully catalogued and crated artifacts was something that would make this trip anything but routine. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders as I pulled away from the loading dock. The trailer was sealed with special tamper-evident locks, and I had strict instructions not to stop anywhere that wasn't absolutely necessary. I was to call in at designated checkpoints and take specific routes with good cell coverage. Standard procedure for high-value loads, but the intensity of their instructions made me wonder just what exactly I was hauling. As I merged onto the highway, my CB radio crackled to life. "Breaker 19 for the Peterbilt pulling out of Tulsa with the museum cargo. You got your ears on?" I didn't recognize the voice, which was odd. Most regulars on this stretch knew me by my handle, Roadrunner. "This is Roadrunner, go ahead," I responded cautiously. "Just wanted to let you know you've got precious cargo, driver. More precious than they told you. Watch your six." Before I could respond, they were gone. Static filled the channel when I tried to call back. A chill ran down my spine, despite the warm Oklahoma morning. Something wasn't right. I called Jerry from my hands-free. "What exactly am I hauling here, Jerry? Just got a strange message on the CB." "Museum stuff, like I told you. Americana, Route 66 memorabilia. Valuable, but nothing crazy." "Why?" I explained the cryptic message. Jerry laughed it off. "Probably just some bored trucker messing with you. You know how it gets on those long hauls. Imagination runs wild." Maybe he was right, but the uneasiness lingered. I decided to stop at the next rest area to check the manifest more carefully. The paperwork listed vintage signs, an original gas pump from the 1930s, some classic car parts, and various historical artifacts with vague descriptions and high insurance values. As I was reading, a black SUV pulled up nearby. Two men in sunglasses watched me for a moment before driving away. Could have been nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. Back on the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Oklahoma landscape rolled by, familiar yet somehow different today. The radio played Johnny Cash's "I've Been Everywhere," which usually put me in a good mood. But today, the lyrics about moving and running felt like a warning. My phone rang again. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Mike Harlow?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows what you're really carrying. Pull over at the Blue Mesa Motel in Sayre. Come alone. We need to talk before it's too late." The line went dead before I could respond. Blue Mesa Motel was about 2 hours ahead on my route. I had no intention of stopping there, but now I couldn't stop thinking about what might be hidden among the museum pieces in my trailer. What had seemed like a routine job was quickly becoming anything but. The open road ahead of me, once a path to freedom, now felt like it was leading me straight into something I didn't understand and might not want to. I drove past the Blue Mesa Motel without slowing down. Whatever game was being played, I wanted no part of it. 20 years on the road had taught me to trust my instincts, and everything about this situation screamed trouble. Museum cargo or not, my job was simple. Pick up, deliver, move on. No detours, no mysterious meetings, no complications. "Not today," I muttered to myself as the neon sign of the motel disappeared in my rear-view mirror. I turned up the radio to drown out my thoughts and focused on the road ahead. But the uneasiness followed me like a shadow. Every vehicle that stayed behind me too long set my nerves on edge. Every call I ignored from that unknown number made my phone feel like a ticking bomb on the seat beside me. By evening, I'd reached the Oklahoma-Texas border. I pulled into a trusted truck stop outside Shamrock, well lit, busy, and with security cameras. Safe enough for a quick meal and a few hours of sleep. As I locked up the truck, I double-checked the trailer seals, still intact. Inside the diner section, I ordered coffee and a burger, then called Jerry again. "I need more information about this load," I said without preamble. "What's going on, Mike? You never worry about cargo details." "Well, I'm worried now. Someone's taking an unusual interest in what I'm hauling, and I don't like it," Jerry sighed. "Look, all I know is it's a collection being transferred from a private collector to the museum. Valuable stuff, historically significant. That's why the security protocols. Valuable enough for someone to follow me. You sure you're being followed, not just road fatigue playing tricks?" I didn't answer. Maybe he was right. Maybe the strange call and the watching men were coincidences, my imagination connecting unrelated dots. My food arrived, brought by a waitress who looked tired enough to have driven the length of Route 66 herself. As she set down my plate, she slipped a folded napkin beside it. "Guy at the counter asked me to give you this," she said quietly, then walked away before I could ask questions. I unfolded the napkin cautiously. Written in neat block letters, "You're carrying stolen history. They'll pin it on you." My appetite vanished. I looked toward the counter, but didn't see anyone who seemed interested in me. Whoever had left the message was gone. I could call the police, but what would I say? That I got a cryptic note about my cargo? That I had a strange phone call? They'd think I was paranoid or on something. Besides, if there was something illegal in my trailer, getting the police involved might be exactly what I didn't want. I paid for my uneaten food and headed back to my truck, suddenly eager to complete this delivery and be done with it. Whatever was happening, I wanted no part of it. Just drive, deliver, forget. That was the plan. But as I approached my truck, I saw a figure leaning against the driver's side door. A woman, middle-aged, with short gray hair and the weathered look of someone who'd spent a lifetime outdoors. "Mike Harlow," she said. Not a question. "We need to talk about what you're carrying." I tensed, ready to either fight or run, but something in the woman's demeanor made me pause. She didn't seem threatening, more like concerned, maybe even afraid. "Who are you?" I demanded, keeping my distance. Marion Reeves, she said, extending a hand I didn't take. I was the curator at the Route 66 Museum in Clinton for 30 years before I retired. And why should I care? She smiled sadly. Because you're hauling stolen artifacts that disappeared from my museum in 1989. Artifacts that a lot of powerful people have been looking for ever since. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Her eyes were clear, direct, and tired. Let's say I believe you, I said, though I wasn't sure I did. What's it got to do with me? I'm just the driver. That's what they're counting on, Marion said. When those stolen pieces are discovered, you'll be the fall guy, the trucker who tried to sell historical treasures on the black market. It's the perfect setup. I leaned against my truck, suddenly feeling the weight of every mile I'd driven that day. Why would anyone go to all this trouble? What's so special about some old Route 66 junk? Marion's expression hardened. It's not junk. Among those artifacts is a ledger that belonged to Stanley Marsh, one of the original investors in Route 66 development. That ledger contains records of bribes, payoffs, and land deals that would embarrass some very prominent families in this part of the country. Families that still have power and influence. It sounded far-fetched, like something from a movie rather than my real life, but the intensity in Marion's eyes made it hard to dismiss her completely. How do you know what's in my trailer? The manifest doesn't mention any ledger. Because I've been tracking these pieces for decades, she said. When I heard they were being transported to Santa Monica, I knew something wasn't right. The collection was split up after the theft. There's no way all the pieces would be reunited unless someone was trying to recover that ledger. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the stubble of a long day on the road. Even if what you're saying is true, what am I supposed to do about it? I can't just abandon my cargo in the middle of nowhere. Marion reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. This is my documentation of the theft and everything I've learned since. Names, dates, connections. If you find yourself in trouble, it might help explain things to the authorities. I took the book reluctantly. I still don't know if I believe any of this. You don't have to believe me, she said. But be careful. Watch for a black Suburban with Texas plates. If you see it, you're being followed by people who won't hesitate to make you disappear along with that ledger. She turned to leave, then paused. There's a man in Tucumcari named Frank Delgado. He owns the Blue Swallow Motel. If you need help, go to him. Tell him Marion sent you. With that, she walked away, disappearing into the night before I could ask any more questions. I stood there holding her book, wondering if I'd just met a conspiracy theorist or someone trying to warn me about genuine danger. Either way, I had a decision to make. Continue as planned and hope this was all nonsense, or take a detour to Tucumcari and find this Frank Delgado. The weight of the book in my hand felt like much more than just paper and leather. It felt like a choice that would change everything. I spent a restless night in the sleeper cab, Marion's book open beside me. The pages contained newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, and photographs documenting the theft of artifacts from the Clinton Route 66 Museum decades ago. The more I read, the more plausible her story seemed. The ledger she mentioned was described in detail, bound in red leather with gold embossing, containing records from 1926 to 1938, the early years of Route 66 development. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I couldn't just ignore what I'd learned. If there was even a chance I was being set up, I needed to protect myself. I started the engine and pulled out of the truck stop, but instead of continuing west on I-40, I took the exit that would lead me back to the old Route 66. If someone was following me, I'd have a better chance of spotting them on the less traveled road. And if I needed to find Frank Delgado in Tucumcari, the mother road would take me right to him. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Texas panhandle as I drove. The landscape was flat and expansive, nowhere to hide, perfect for spotting a tail. Sure enough, about 20 minutes after I'd turned onto Route 66, I noticed a black SUV appear behind me, keeping a consistent distance. "Well, hello there," I muttered, watching it in my mirrors. I slowed slightly. The SUV slowed too. I sped up. So did they. My heart rate kicked up a notch. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was real. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the SUV in my mirror. Then I called Jerry. "I need you to run a plate for me," I said when he answered, giving him the number I could make out from the photo. "What? I can't just run plates, Mike. What's going on with you?" "Jerry, I think I'm in trouble here, real trouble. Someone's following me, and it has something to do with this cargo." There was a long pause. "Mike, the museum called this morning. They said they sent someone to check on the cargo. Standard procedure, they said." My blood ran cold. "Did they describe the vehicle?" "No, but it's a black Suburban with Texas plates. Am I right?" Another pause. "I don't know, Mike. This is getting weird. Maybe you should just pull over and let them check the cargo if that's all they want." "That's not happening," I said firmly. "Something's not right here, Jerry. I need you to trust me on this." I could almost hear him thinking through the phone. Finally, he sighed. "Be careful, Mike. I'll see what I can find out about that plate. Call me when you get to Tucumcari." I hung up, my decision now fully made. I was heading to the Blue Swallow Motel to find Frank Delgado. The mother road stretched before me, a weathered ribbon cutting through the landscape. My father's voice seemed to whisper from memory. "Route 66 always leads you where you need to go, son. Not always where you planned, but where you need to be." The black SUV maintained its distance behind me. They weren't trying to catch up, just keeping me in sight, waiting for something. I had the unsettling feeling that I was being herded. As I crossed from Texas into New Mexico, the terrain began to change, becoming more rugged and colorful. The SUV was still there, a persistent shadow, but now I had a destination, a purpose beyond just driving. For the first time since this strange journey began, I felt like I was taking control rather than just reacting. Tucumcari was still hours away. I settled in for the drive, one eye on the road ahead and one on the rearview mirror, crossing a threshold into territory, both literal and figurative, from which there would be no easy return. The neon glow of the Blue Swallow Motel sign was a welcome sight as I pulled into Tucumcari in the late afternoon. The vintage motel, with its distinctive Blue Swallow sign and classic Route 66 architecture, looked like something from another era, which I supposed it was. The black SUV had dropped back as I entered town, but I knew they weren't far. They were giving me space, perhaps not wanting to be too obvious in a small town where strangers were noticed. I parked my rig in the large lot adjacent to the motel and walked to the office, Marion's book tucked securely in my jacket. A bell jingled as I entered, and a man looked up from behind the counter. He was in his 60s, with salt and pepper hair and the deep tan of someone who spent a lot of time outdoors. "Help you?" he asked, friendly but reserved. "I'm looking for Frank Delgado." His expression didn't change. "You found him. What can I do for you?" I glanced around to make sure we were alone. "Marion Reeves sent me." That got a reaction. His eyes widened slightly and he studied me more carefully. "Marion, huh? Haven't heard that name in a while." He reached under the counter and flipped a sign in the window to "No Vacancy." "Let's talk in the back." He led me through a door behind the counter into a small apartment. The walls were covered with Route 66 memorabilia, old signs, maps, photographs. He gestured for me to sit at a kitchen table while he poured 2 cups of coffee. "So, you're the trucker," he said, setting a mug in front of me. "Marion called last night, said you might be coming. Then you know what this is about?" Frank nodded. "The stolen artifacts. The ledger." He took a sip of his coffee. "What Marion probably didn't tell you is that I was a suspect in that theft back in '89. I tensed, ready to bolt, but Frank raised a hand. I was cleared, but not before it cost me my job as a park ranger and nearly ruined my life. I've been trying to find out who really did it ever since." "And who was that?" I asked. "The Blackwood family," he said grimly. They practically built this part of New Mexico during the Route 66 boom. Hotels, gas stations, diners, they owned it all. And they didn't always acquire their land legally, and this ledger proves that. That and more. Stanley Marsh recorded everything. Who got paid off, who got threatened, who disappeared. The Blackwoods thought all evidence was gone until rumors of the ledger surfaced in the 80s. I took out Marion's book and slid it across the table. She gave me this. Frank flipped through it, nodding. Marion's been thorough. But there's more. She doesn't know. He looked up at me. The Blackwoods aren't just after the ledger. They're after everything connected to it, including people who know about it. A chill ran through me. People like me now. Exactly. And they've got connections everywhere. Police, government, businesses along the route. That's how they've tracked the artifacts all these years. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Jerry. "Mike, where are you?" He sounded tense. "Tucumcari. Why?" "Listen carefully. That plate you had me run. It's registered to Blackwood Security Services, and I just got a call from the museum saying they never sent anyone to check on the cargo. Whatever's going on, it's not legitimate." I looked at Frank, who was watching me intently. "Thanks, Jerry. I owe you one. Just be careful. And Mike, I think you should call the police." I ended the call and filled Frank in. "Police won't help," he said. "Not here. We need to check your cargo, find that ledger, and get it somewhere safe before the Blackwoods make their move." "How do I know I can trust you?" I asked. Frank stood and rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar running from wrist to elbow. "Courtesy of the Blackwoods when I got too close to the truth 10 years ago. Trust me or don't, but we're running out of time." Through the window, I saw a black SUV cruise slowly past the motel. Decision time. "Let's check the trailer," I said, standing up, "but we do it my way." Night had fallen by the time Frank and I approached my truck. The parking lot was dark except for the neon glow from the motel sign, casting everything in surreal blue light. "We need to be quick," Frank whispered. "If they're watching, they won't let us get far once we break those seals." I unlocked the trailer with trembling hands. The tamper-evident seals broke with a snap that seemed too loud in the quiet night. We slid the door open just enough to slip inside, and I switched on my flashlight. The trailer was packed with crates and display cases, each carefully secured for transport. Museum pieces, just as the manifest claimed, vintage gas pumps, signs, an old jukebox, and dozens of smaller artifacts in protective packaging. "We're looking for a wooden crate about this big," Frank said, gesturing with his hands. "Should have Clinton Museum markings." We searched methodically, working our way from front to back. In the far corner, partially hidden behind a large crate containing a restored gas pump, we found it, a wooden box with faded Clinton Route 66 museum stenciling. "This is it," Frank said, his voice tight with anticipation. The crate was secured with simple metal clasps. Inside, nestled in protective foam, was a collection of items, old photographs, postcards, a tarnished key, and there, a red leather book with gold embossing. The ledger. Frank reached for it, but I grabbed his wrist. "Not yet. First, I need to know exactly what we're doing with it." He met my gaze steadily. "There's a journalist in Albuquerque, Sofia Martinez. She's been investigating the Blackwoods for years. We get this to her, she publishes the story, and the Blackwoods lose their power to hurt anyone over this." I considered this. "And I don't go to jail for stealing museum property?" "It was stolen property to begin with. You'll be returning it to its rightful place." Before I could respond, headlights swept across the trailer door. Someone was pulling into the lot. "We need to go," Frank hissed. "Now!" I grabbed the ledger and stuffed it inside my jacket. We slipped out of the trailer and closed the door, but it was too late. The black SUV had parked directly behind my truck, blocking it in. "Back door," Frank said, pulling me toward the motel. We ducked around the corner just as two men emerged from the SUV. Even in the dim light, I could see the outline of holsters under their jackets. "The room at the end," Frank whispered. "There's a door that leads to the back lot. I have a car there." We moved quickly along the row of rooms, staying in the shadows. Behind us, I heard the men discovering the broken seals on my trailer. "They're gone!" one shouted. "Check the motel!" We ran the last few yards to the room. Frank fumbled with a key, got the door open, and we rushed inside. Through the back window, I could see an old pickup truck parked in a small lot behind the motel. "That's our ride," Frank said. "Ready?" The ledger felt heavy against my chest. I nodded. "Let's go." Frank's pickup roared to life as we jumped in. We peeled out of the back lot just as the men rounded the corner of the motel, guns drawn. "Get down!" Frank shouted as a shot cracked through the night air. I ducked as the rear window shattered. Frank swerved onto a side street, then another, working his way through Tucumcari's grid of streets until we hit Route 66, heading west. "They'll be right behind us," he said grimly. "And they'll have called ahead. There'll be more waiting." My heart hammered in my chest. The ledger pressed against my ribs like a brand. What now? We don't take the main road to Albuquerque. There's an old trading post about 30 miles from here, run by a Navajo family, I trust. We can hide there until morning. The headlights of Frank's pickup cut through the darkness as we sped along Route 66. The road was empty, a black ribbon stretching across the New Mexico desert. But the emptiness didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt exposed. Sure enough, within minutes, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, gaining fast. "They found us," I said. Frank pressed the accelerator harder. The old pickup shuddered as it reached speeds it wasn't built for. "There's a turnoff coming up. Old service road. They might not know about it." The SUV was closing the gap. I could now make out two vehicles, working in tandem to chase us down. Frank suddenly cut the wheel hard, and we lurched onto a barely visible dirt road. The pickup bounced violently as we left the pavement, dust billowing behind us. "Hold on!" Frank shouted as we crested a small rise. On the other side was a dry wash, a sandy riverbed. The pickup slid down the embankment and Frank killed the lights, pulling behind a large outcropping of rock. "Stay down," he whispered. We sat in tense silence as the SUVs raced past on Route 66, their headlights briefly illuminating our hiding spot before continuing west. "They'll figure it out soon enough," Frank said, starting the engine again. "We need to keep moving." We followed the dry wash for several miles, headlights off, guided only by moonlight. Every bump and jostle sent pain through my tense muscles. The ledger felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket. "What's in this thing that's worth killing for?" I asked. Frank kept his eyes on the difficult terrain ahead. History, power, proof that the Blackwood Empire was built on theft and murder, and they're willing to add more murder to keep it secret. Some secrets are worth killing for, to the right people. The wash eventually led us back to a dirt road, and after several more miles of tense driving, we reached the trading post, a small cluster of buildings with a single light burning. As we pulled up, the door opened, and an elderly Navajo man stepped out, rifle in hand. "Thomas," Frank called. "It's Frank Delgado. We need help." Thomas lowered his rifle and beckoned us inside. The trading post was a simple building, part store, part living quarters, filled with handcrafted jewelry, blankets, and essential supplies for travelers. "Blackwoods?" Thomas asked simply as he bolted the door behind us. Frank nodded. "They're after this." He gestured to the ledger I was still clutching. Thomas's weathered face showed no surprise. "They came through here last week, asking questions." He led us to a back room and moved a heavy rug, revealing a trapdoor. "Root cellar. From when this was a stop on the Underground Railroad for native people escaping reservations. You'll be safe." The cellar was small but clean, with 2 cots, a lantern, and shelves of preserved food. Thomas brought us water and coffee before leaving us to rest, promising to keep watch. Finally feeling somewhat secure, I took out the ledger. Frank and I huddled around the lantern as I carefully opened the fragile book. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, dates, names, amounts, and brief notes. Some entries were mundane business transactions, but others were clearly records of bribes and threats. "Look," Frank pointed to an entry from 1932. "Payment to Sheriff Wilson, $500 for cooperation in Diné land acquisition." He turned the page. Here, J. Blackwood authorized force against Martinez family, property secured. I felt sick. This is evidence of crimes. Crimes that built an empire, Frank said. The Blackwoods used Route 66 to become powerful. They bought land cheap, or took it, then developed it as the highway brought travelers west. Hotels, gas stations, restaurants, they owned it all. As we continued through the ledger, a pattern emerged. The Blackwoods had systematically forced people off their land along the planned route, sometimes through legal manipulation, sometimes through violence. But these crimes happened decades ago, I said. Why kill for this now? Frank turned to the final pages. Because of this. The last entries detailed payments to a Judge R. and Congressman H. Substantial amounts with notes about ongoing arrangements. These aren't just the grandparents of today's Blackwoods, Frank explained. These are the foundations of relationships that still exist. Political connections, business partnerships, all built on corruption that continues today. I understood now. This wasn't just history, it was a threat to current power. So what do we do? I asked. We get this to Sophia in Albuquerque. She has the platform and protection to make it public. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. We were committed now. Get some sleep, Frank said. Tomorrow will be dangerous. I lay on the cot, the ledger secure beside me. For the first time in days, I felt I was doing something right. This wasn't just about saving myself anymore. It was about justice long delayed. As I drifted towards sleep, I thought about my father. He'd loved Route 66 for its freedom, its promise. He never knew the darker history beneath the pavement, how that freedom had come at a cost for some. Now I had the chance to set that right. The reward wasn't just survival, it was truth. Dawn broke with urgent knocking. Thomas opened the cellar door, his expression grave. Black cars on the highway. Stopping at every building. You must go now. We gathered our few belongings quickly. The ledger went back inside my jacket. There's a back way, Thomas said, leading us through a storage room to a door that opened onto desert scrubland. Follow the wash south. My nephew will meet you with a car at the old church. Frank gripped Thomas's hand. Thank you, old friend. This land has seen too many secrets, Thomas replied. Go with protection. He handed me a small leather pouch on a cord. Navajo blessing for the journey. We set off across the open desert, keeping low. The morning sun cast long shadows as we trudged through sand and scrub, always listening for vehicles. After an hour of difficult hiking, we reached a small, abandoned church, its adobe walls crumbling. A young Navajo man waited beside an old jeep. I'm Aaron, he said. Uncle Thomas called. I'll take you to the highway south of Santa Rosa. They won't be looking there yet. The ride was tense, bouncing along back roads I never knew existed. Aaron drove skillfully, avoiding the main routes while making good time. The Blackwoods have been trouble for generations, he said. My grandfather lost his trading post to them in the 40s. What you're doing matters. By mid-morning we reached a junction with Highway 54. Aaron pointed south. 50 miles that way is Vaughn. You can catch the train to Albuquerque, less obvious than driving. We thanked him, and he left us with a final warning. They have eyes everywhere. Trust no one. The walk to Vaughn was grueling under the New Mexico sun. We stayed off the highway, moving parallel through the brush, only approaching town as dusk fell. The small railway station was nearly empty. One bored attendant sold us tickets for the evening train. We sat in the shadows of the platform, watching every car that passed. Once we reach Albuquerque, Frank said quietly, we go straight to Sophia's newspaper. No stops, no calls. I nodded, too exhausted for words. The past days felt like a lifetime. My normal existence, the routine of the road, the simple pleasure of driving, seemed to belong to someone else now. The train arrived with a screech of brakes. We boarded quickly, finding seats in the back of a nearly empty car. As the train pulled away, I caught a glimpse of a black SUV turning into the station parking lot. They're here, I whispered to Frank. They can't stop the train, he replied. We have a head start. But his eyes betrayed his concern. The Blackwoods were closing in, and the final leg of our journey would be the most dangerous. The train gathered speed, carrying us toward Albuquerque, toward the end of this unexpected journey, or perhaps toward its most perilous chapter. The train rolled into Albuquerque just after midnight. The station was nearly deserted, but we scanned every shadow, every waiting car. No sign of the Blackwoods, yet. "Sophia's newspaper office is closed at this hour," Frank said. "She lives in an apartment downtown. We need to get there without being seen." We avoided main streets, sticking to alleys and side roads. The city slept around us, unaware of the decades-old secrets we carried. Every passing car made us freeze in doorways or duck behind dumpsters. After an hour of tense navigation, we reached a modest apartment building. Frank checked the directory and pressed a buzzer. "Who is it?" A woman's voice, cautious and sleep-rough. "Frank Delgado, with the Ledger." Silence. Then the door buzzed open. Sophia Martinez was waiting in her doorway on the third floor. A woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She ushered us inside quickly, checking the hallway before locking and chaining the door. "I've been waiting years for this," she said, eyeing the bulge in my jacket where the Ledger rested. "Show me." I handed it over, feeling a strange reluctance. This book had changed my life, put me in danger, made me a fugitive, and now I was giving it away. Sophia handled it reverently, examining key pages, Frank pointed out. Her expression hardened as she read. "This is bigger than I imagined. The current governor is a Blackwood cousin. Their corporation has contracts with every major agency in the state." She looked up. "They'll do anything to keep this quiet." "That's why we need your help," I said. "We can't fight them alone." She nodded. "I have a photographer coming at dawn. We'll document every page, then upload everything to secure servers. Once it's public, they can't bury it again." A weight lifted from my shoulders. We'd done it. The truth would come out. Then came the crash of splintering wood as the apartment door burst open. Two men in black tactical gear stormed in, guns raised. Behind them stood an elegant older man in an expensive suit, silver-haired, cold-eyed. "Mr. Blackwood," Frank said, his voice tight. "The Ledger," Blackwood said calmly. "Now." Sophia clutched the book to her chest. "It's too late. People know." "No one knows anything yet," Blackwood replied. "And no one will." One of the armed men stepped forward to take the Ledger. I tensed, ready to fight despite the guns. This couldn't be how it ended. The window behind us exploded inward as police in SWAT gear rappelled into the apartment. More officers burst through the door, shouting commands. "FBI, everyone down! Hands where we can see them!" Confusion erupted. Blackwood's men turned their weapons toward the new threat. I lunged for Sophia, pulling her down as gunfire erupted. When the chaos cleared, Blackwood's men were in handcuffs. Blackwood himself stood rigid with fury as an FBI agent read him his rights. A female agent approached us. "Agent Diana Reeves. You've been busy, Mr. Harlow." "Reeves," I asked. "Any relation to Marion?" She smiled slightly. "My mother. She's been working with us for years, gathering evidence against the Blackwoods. Your journey with the Ledger was the final piece we needed." I looked at Frank, who seemed as surprised as I was. "You mean this was all—" "Not all planned," Agent Reeves said, "but we've been watching and waiting for the right moment." The Ledger was safe. The truth would come out. And somehow, impossibly, I had survived. 3 months later, I stood at the edge of the Santa Monica Pier, watching the Pacific waves roll in. The end of Route 66, the end of a journey in more ways than one. The newspaper beside me on the bench carried the headline, "Blackwood Empire Falls, Historic Route 66, Corruption Exposed." Sophia's byline. The story had rocked New Mexico politics, led to multiple arrests, and sparked investigations in 3 states. My phone buzzed with a text from Jerry. "Cargo delivered yet? New load waiting when you're ready." I smiled. After everything, Jerry still treated me like just another driver. It was comforting in its normalcy. The museum cargo, -1 Ledger now held as evidence, had finally reached its destination. The Clinton Route 66 Museum was getting back its stolen artifacts, and I was no longer a suspect in anything. In fact, according to the FBI, I was a cooperative witness in an ongoing federal investigation. Frank had gone back to Tucumcari. His name had been officially cleared in the 1989 theft, his reputation restored. He'd called yesterday to tell me the Blue Swallow was having its best season in years. Tourists coming to see the motel that played a role in the Blackwood scandal. Marion Reeves had finally retired for real, her decades-long quest for justice complete. She'd sent me a Route 66 shield keychain with a note, "The road always leads where you need to go." I fingered the Navajo blessing pouch still hanging around my neck. Thomas and his nephew had refused any reward, saying simply that justice was payment enough. A family walked past me on the pier, parents with a young boy who pointed excitedly at a vintage car driving along the beachfront. "Look, Dad, like from the old days." The father smiled. "That's from when Route 66 was the main way west, son. People came looking for a better life." I thought about all the stories embedded in that historic highway, the hopes and dreams, yes, but also the darker truths we'd uncovered, the complete history, not just the nostalgic version. Standing, I walked to the "End of the Trail" sign that marked Route 66's western terminus. Tourists took photos beside it, unaware of the man who'd recently carried explosive secrets along that very route. I'd been changed by the journey. I was still a trucker. That would always be my life. But now I saw the road differently. Every mile marker had a story. Every small town held secrets. The America I traveled through was more complex than I'd ever realized. My next load would be waiting soon. Back to the routine of pickups and deliveries, way stations and truck stops. But I'd carry with me the knowledge that sometimes an ordinary driver could become part of something extraordinary. I touched the "End of the Trail" sign briefly, a private goodbye to the adventure. Then I turned east, back toward the beginning of Route 66, ready for whatever the road might bring next. The Mother Road had tested me, taught me, and ultimately led me exactly where I needed to go.